The letter arrived this morning. I need to find £2,000 to extend my work visa or leave the UK. £2,000 when I'm a cleaner on the minimum wage. I work nights mopping hospital floors, risking my life to save others. It's enough to make anyone weep. I have a second cleaning job too, working in the house of a very important woman. I think I better refer to as Mrs. X. Well, you'll see why. I'd really hoped she'd be able to put me on the furlough scheme so I'd still have some money coming in from my second job. She's always saying how pleased she is with my work, so I thought she'd probably do it too. I was disinfecting the handrail of the hospital staircase when my phone pinged with a message. Mrs. X has sacked me. She's not prepared to pay 20% of my wages while I cannot come to her house. Mrs. X is a millionaire with a 6-bedroom mansion in a very smart part of London. She's an advisor to the government, I think. Something to do with trade. I can't remember her exact job title, but you see her on the TV sometimes. Still, having to pay only 20% of the £8.72 an hour earned by her cleaner is something she doesn't seem willing to consider. She hints in her email that she might need cleaning services resumed at a later date, but doesn't make it entirely clear if it's me she'll take back on or if she'll hire somebody else. I wish I hadn't confided in her about my NHS job. I wonder if the fact I'm working in a hospital has made her keener to be rid of me. Is she afraid I'll bring the virus into her house? If she'd told me that, at least I'd know, but she's giving me no reason at all. It's just, I'm having to let you go. Let me go. Even the words make it sound like she's doing me a favour. I've always been on time, always been professional, and I take pride in my work. I'm actually qualified to teach, but all I've been able to get here at the moment are cleaning jobs. Without me, moths would have destroyed all of Mrs. X's antique Turkish rugs. I spotted the first signs in her study last winter and dealt with the problem then and there. Over the years, I've certainly saved her far more money than she'd had to pay me. So now I'm mopping angry. That's what Therese calls it. She could tell by the way I'm working tonight that I'm still very upset about Mrs. X. I explained I'd always felt Mrs. X respected me. We'd drink tea together and chat. She would ask me about myself and my life and family back home. I wouldn't go as far as to call us friends, but when she speaks to me, she's always respectful, meets my eyes, smiles at me. She's never ordered me about and always says please and thank you. I've worked in other large houses for other rich English people, and they behave like they think I'm worthless, invisible. Mrs. X isn't like that. That's why this hurts. After taking my anger out on the floor and talking to Therese, I feel calmer and more hopeful. I might make a detour to pass Mrs. X's. It's in St. John's Wood and only means getting off the bus a couple of stops early. When I catch the bus, I'm probably the most relaxed person on board. For other people on their way to or from work, this is the riskiest part of their day. When you wash down wards, travelling is probably quite a bit safer than that. At the hospital, I wear a mask, gloves and apron, but despite our pleas, the cleaners don't get to have full PPE. We work for a private firm. We are not NHS workers. Before COVID, We were an ever-changing group of people hailing from every continent. You only just got to know someone and then they went back home or moved on to a better job. For the moment, though, there is no way back home for most of us and no chance of a better job. But we all feel a sense of pride doing what we do. By destroying the virus where it settles and surfaces, we are part of the war against it. The same as the doctors and nurses. We are key workers, saving lives, and that feels good. It doesn't make the fear go away, but at least when I'm at work, it's a shared fear. The time when it's harder, that's when I get home. I close the door and I'm alone. That's when I look in the mirror and I find the woman in me has vanished. I see instead a scared little girl looking back. I walked around the block 3 times before I dare walk up to Mrs. X's door. Her house is a detached one opposite the canal, standing proud in a mature garden with a weeping willow tree. The windows have wooden shutters and the front door has a brass lion door knocker and a video entry system. I intend to stand back by the gate and speak to my employer at a very safe distance. I'm just going to state my case, simply and with dignity. All I need is to be furloughed. I'm not asking for a full wage to do nothing. When this crisis is over, I'm willing to put in extra hours for free to make up for what I cost her now. Mrs. X doesn't answer the door. She doesn't appear to be in. Perhaps she's at an important meeting or briefing. Maybe she's shopping. Sometimes I'd buy her groceries, even though it was not officially part of my job. I'd put the food in the oven and refill the coffee machine too. I'd water the plants when she was away and air the rooms before she returned. I suppose I was more housekeeper than cleaner. When I get in after a hospital shift, I tend to put on the TV and search for a bit of comedy or a music program. Today, though, I caught the end of the news show where they discussed the day's events. Mrs. X was on it, giving some kind of advice for businesses during the lockdown. I've seen her on TV before, and she does tend to talk sense. This time, though, I couldn't concentrate on anything she was saying. Like all the people being interviewed nowadays, she was self-filming on her webcam from home. Only, I'd swear that painting behind her was not in her London home. I've dusted the frames of all her artwork and I've never seen that one. Perhaps she's been rearranging things or bought a new picture. But as she talked on, I realized that she doesn't have a burgundy-colored wall like that in any room of her house. She doesn't have built-in bookcases either, and I'd have noticed that shiny green vase in the shape of a wave if I'd seen it before. In the few weeks since I've last visited, could she have changed her wall color and lots of her furnishings? But I know the answer to that question already. Mrs. X is not in her London home, and I probably know that home better than she does. I can be completely certain that Mrs. X is at another location. I know it. She's now somewhere she has travelled to during lockdown. She has gone to her second home, even though that is currently not allowed. So it turns out that Mrs. X is like all the others. Those people who tell us all we must do one thing and then they do something else themselves. I didn't think she was this type of person. I thought she was like me. Honest. Oh no, cleaning angry again, said Therese when she saw my furious mopping. That's when the whole story tumbled out. How I have to obey unfair rules like paying to extend my visa while I'm working to help the NHS. How my private employer has let me go when she could have furloughed me so I still receive some money. And how that employer, Mrs. X, has broken the lockdown rules we are all keeping, saving lives. Mrs. X doesn't care about the people I see sobbing outside the hospital or the covered bodies being wheeled away. There are people on ventilators and people drawing their last rasping breath because people like Mrs. X have broken the rules. Therese told me to sit down. She said I was breathing heavy and she was afraid I might have a heart attack. At least we are in a hospital, I joked. But I wasn't going to sit until our job was done. The corridor had to be clean and safe for everyone to walk along. You've got her email address. You should let her know, you know. Therese and I were walking towards the bus stop. Blackmail her, you mean? I was shocked that she could think of such a thing. You don't have to go as far as to ask her for money. I am certainly not doing that. You could simply ask her to keep you on, Nadine, and just drop the fact that you know she's staying at a second home into the email. No, I'm not doing that either. It isn't honest. Oh, and is what she's done honest? Therese had a point, it's true, but I'm too stubborn and proud to sink to Mrs. X's level. I always try to be a good person, a moral person. Threatening to tell tales isn't something I feel comfortable doing. I need to be able to live with myself. Just because someone else behaves badly doesn't mean you should do the same. Well, go to the newspapers then, or the TV people. Therese was not giving up. I shook my head. I'm not doing it, Therese. I'm not. You wouldn't have to give your name. You could tip them off anonymously. That's when I put out my hand to flag down our bus, but it swished on by, already carrying as many social distance passengers as it was allowed. It meant we would have to wait, but the driver was doing the right thing by obeying the rules, keeping people safe. Look, I'm not discussing this anymore, I said to Therese. Honestly, Nadine, you sound like the Prime Minister, she snapped back. And you know it's not right, letting rich, privileged people break every rule. If you won't call someone about your Mrs. X, then I just might. I might tweet the newspaper or even the police when I get home. I won't mention you, of course. I'll tell them they'll have to investigate for themselves. I bet they'll do it too. I shrugged. I'd had enough of the whole thing. If Therese wanted to tell the world and get my former employer in trouble, well, what did it matter to me? I'd never see Mrs. X again, apart from in the papers or on TV. She's probably already forgotten about me, and I was going to forget her too. Besides, I've more urgent things to worry about. I need to chase up my claim for universal credit and try to find another non-domestic cleaning job before my visa expires.